Ismail. I have been working as a security guard in a shopping mall for many years. People always think that shopping malls are only lively during the day, but I know that the real stories hide at night. The story I'm about to tell you contains a terrifying secret that I've experienced in that shopping mall, a secret I couldn't tell anyone. One night, during my routine patrol, I was walking towards the depths of the shopping mall. The corridors were filled with silence, and only the echoes of my footsteps could be heard. That night, I felt that something was off. I couldn't find peace in this place that should normally be quiet. As I turned a corner, my vision momentarily darkened. I heard a voice, as if someone was whispering. I quickly looked around, but I couldn't see anyone. I took a deep breath and continued on my way. After a while, I turned to head back to the guard room. However, the labyrinthine corridors of the mall didn't seem to lead me to any familiar place. I felt lost, as if the corridors in this shopping mall would never end. Suddenly, a door appeared in front of me, a door that wasn't supposed to be there. Curiously, I approached the door and turned the handle. The door opened silently, and I stepped inside. Before me lay an unknown section of the shopping mall. I stepped forward with fear gripping me. The shops in that section were closed, but there was an eerie atmosphere around. For a moment, I began to hear sounds. In the distance, it sounded like a faint scream, but for a moment, it felt like the sound of the wind. I continued forward, determinedly, and noticed that one shop's door was open. I entered hesitantly and couldn't believe my eyes. The shop seemed abandoned, but there was something inside. I stopped in front of a display window. The mannequin inside was staring at me with empty eyes. I swallowed hard and wanted to retreat, but something was pulling me towards that mannequin. I looked at the mannequin's hand and saw a note. With trembling hands, I took the note and read it. It said, "The person who knows the secret of those who come here is the night guard." Confused, I turned back and headed towards the exit of the shopping mall, but the corridors seemed to be mixed up, and I couldn't find the way out. At every turn, I saw the same mannequin, as if it was watching me. Finally, I reached the guard room. My eyes were heavy with fatigue, but the discomfort caused by that note was growing inside me. As I tried to understand what was happening, I suddenly heard a whisper in the room. "You are the night guard," a voice whispered, but there was no one in the room. Since that day, I have continued to work as a security guard in that shopping mall, but I cannot forget that secret. Who wrote the note behind that mannequin? What did they want? And most importantly, was that shopping mall truly cursed? Hello, I'm David. I work as a security guard in a shopping mall. Due to the nature of my job, I often wander around the mall alone at night. This story recounts a frightening incident that happened to me one night in an elevator. That night, during my routine patrol, I was checking the closing of a store on the top floor of the shopping mall. It was well past midnight, and the mall was shrouded in silence. As my shift was ending and I stepped into the elevator to go home, I felt a sense of unease. The elevator doors closed, and as I pressed the buttons to select the floor, the lights flickered for a moment and then went out completely. My heart started racing. Panicking, I looked around, and suddenly I was faced with a silhouette appearing before me. In the darkness, it stared at me with dull eyes. I froze for a moment. That figure looked like a ghost. It slowly stepped towards me, reaching out its hand. My heart was pounding rapidly, and I struggled to breathe. Hoping for the doors to open, I watched as the figure silently continued to approach me. Finally, the doors opened, and I dashed outside. I ran away from the shopping mall. I lost sight of that dark figure, but fear had deeply ingrained itself in my heart. The next day, I couldn't muster the courage to go back to the shopping mall. However, the memories of that dark figure and the horrifying moments in the elevator were etched into my mind. What happened that night? Who was that dark figure? Was it truly a ghost or just a lost soul in the darkness? It was impossible to forget that incident, and every time I stepped into an elevator, my heart still raced with fear. Since that day, working in the shopping mall didn't bring me as much peace. Fear lurked within me at every moment, and the events of that night forced me to confront nightmares forever. My eyes were fixed on the monitors in the cameras. With trembling hands, I was typing on the keyboard, anxiously reviewing the recordings of past hours. It was one of the busiest days in the shopping mall, with the Christmas holiday approaching. But my attention wasn't on the areas monitored by the cameras. I was carefully scrutinizing the screen at the last place the missing child was seen. Until that day, I had enjoyed working in the shopping mall. But that day, everything changed. I needed to find a missing child, but this wasn't an ordinary disappearance. In the camera footage, a strange figure appeared at the last place the child was seen, with a long cloak and a mask hiding its face. That figure stood out unusually, but the strangest part was that the figure followed the child and then vanished. As I reviewed the records to find the child, a strange sense of unease filled me. My eyes drifted away from the monitors and glanced at the corridors of the shopping mall. As time passed, everything seemed to blur together. The footage from the areas we were monitoring disappeared, leaving us in a dark void. As hours went by, the unease of not finding the child gnawed at me. At the same time, I tried to understand who that strange figure was and why it was following the child. But everything was a puzzle. Finally, I found a clue. A strange shadow appeared near a restroom, close to where the child was last seen. I rushed to that area immediately. However, the shadow was not there. It disappeared, as if it had never existed. I stopped and took a deep breath. At that moment, I heard a voice beside me. It whispered, "I'll never let you leave from here." My heart almost stopped. I looked around quickly, but I couldn't see anyone. It was as if that voice came from thin air. I was drenched in sweat, feeling alone in the dark corridors of the shopping mall. At that moment, I made a decision. I had to solve this mystery. I started looking into every corner of the shopping mall, but with every step, I feared encountering that figure. Yet, I gathered my courage and pressed on. Finally, when I reached the terrace level, I noticed that everything suddenly changed. The sky was clouded, and everything outside the shopping mall seemed to have vanished. Panic-stricken, I looked around, but I couldn't see any way out. Then, a shadow appeared in the distance. My heart started racing rapidly. The shadow began to speak to me and tried to pull me out of reality into a dark dimension. I couldn't control myself and walked towards it. I don't remember what happened next. When I woke up, the security guards of the shopping mall had found me. I looked at them with a face full of fear, but I couldn't explain what had happened, because what I experienced in that dark dimension couldn't be real. That day, I left the shopping mall and never returned, but I can't forget that strange figure and that dark dimension. Perhaps I had discovered how thin the line between reality and darkness was, and perhaps I had learned that some mysteries were not meant to be solved.